Center program, which Congress created in 1992. The Regional Center program has essentially two important distinctions from the standalone program that really is the reason the Regional Center program is vastly more popular in the EB-5 category. And that is, it permits job creation to be counted in a slightly different way. For a standalone investor, one can only count direct jobs of a business, but in the regional center context, one can measure the overall impact of a project using economic modeling. So the job creation total is much larger, and therefore that requirement, which is a key requirement in EB-5, is much easier to meet. The second advantage of the Regional Center program is that you can pool investor money together. So instead of having just a single investor in a project, you can have 50 or 100 or 200 or more investors, all of whom pool their money together in an entity, and that entity then takes that money and typically loans it to a specific project. And this has certain advantages in terms of being able to collateralize that loan, and also having a defined exit strategy when the loan becomes due and payable and is repaid to the entity in which these investors place their initial $800,000 equity investment. They can be repaid their proceeds. And indeed, that's one of the things that distinguishes EB-5 from other citizenship by investment programs, and that is the idea that you are repaid your investment after a period of time. That is the goal of any well-structured regional center project. And this structure has worked tremendously well. EB-5 has been very successful in the United States, specifically starting after the financial crisis of 2008 is when the EB-5 program really gained traction. And you can see the numbers here. The red graph actually represents regional center investments, and the blue graph represents standalone investments, and you can see how much more popular regional center investments are. But it's been very successful in creating foreign direct investment in the United States, jobs in the US for US workers, and of course, it's allowed thousands and thousands of families to successfully emigrate to the United States. And why is it so successful? Well, it's because of the great flexibility of the EB-5 visa. In most other employment-based visa categories, you need to find an employer to sponsor you. You don't need that in EB-5. EB-5 is a self-sponsored petition, and it allows you and your immediate family, so that's a spouse and unmarried children under 21, to benefit from the green card. You can live and work anywhere you want in the United States. It's not like you have an employer and you have to obviously live where the employer is located. And even in EB-5, you're investing in a specific project located somewhere in the United States, but you don't have to live where that project is located. You also don't have any day-to-day direct managerial experience of the project. So you are essentially a passive investor in the EB-5 investment structure. You have certain policy-making positions and obligations, but the day-to-day management of the project is handled by different entities in the EB-5 structure. As Vicki mentioned, your kids can attend school in the US, not as foreign students, so they don't have to get an F visa in order to enter and study. And depending on the state, they may be able to pay in-state tuition. Certainly, they'll be eligible for scholarships and financial aid that they would not be eligible for as a foreign student. Perhaps the biggest benefit is that when they graduate, they are immediately part of the US workforce. They don't have to try to find an employer to sponsor them for an H-1B visa or anything like that. They are just as competitive as their fellow graduating US citizen classmates. 5 years after becoming a green card holder, they can become a citizen they don't have to. It's an option. But if they do seek citizenship, let's say there's parents are the applicants. They can then apply as U.S. citizens for their parents to come to the United States under the concept of family reunification. That is a category that is not subject to numerical limits. And so it's quite easy to file a petition, and within about a year, parents can then relocate to the United States. So I mentioned numerical limits, and those of you on the call, or if you've looked at all at trying to emigrate to the United States, you are aware of the significant backlogs that exist for Philippine applicants in both the employment-based and the family-based categories. What you see on the screen here is the November 2023 visa bulletin, which shows the cutoff dates for various visa categories. So you can see, for example, for EB3, for an applicant from the Philippines, can't move to the United States until their priority date is current, which is the date that they file their immigrant petition. You can see in the family-based categories, the retrogression period is even longer. So, for example, if you filed for a brother or a sister in the F3 category, you're looking at probably close to a 20-year wait before that person can emigrate. This is why EB5 is so popular in many countries that have retrogression, very much like the retrogression that you see here for the Philippines. And that is because if you look at the employment-based category for EB5, you can see there's a C in all of those boxes. And what does that mean? That means it's current, which means there are visas immediately available. So there is no visa wait at all in EB5, and we do not expect a visa wait to occur for Philippine investors, perhaps ever, but certainly for a long time. And that is because in addition to the yearly limit of visa numbers, there's something called a per country cap. So no country can use more than 7% of the total visas unless other countries don't use their allocation. And the Philippines has not historically been a heavy user of EB5, so I would not expect the Philippines to retrogress in the EB5 category anytime soon. So the process of EB5 is as follows. You file a form with the United States Citizenship and Immigration Service called an I-526E. The principal information that you're including in that form is documentation of how you made the money to make the investment. And I'm going to talk about what those requirements are a little later in my presentation. Once the I-526 is approved, if you are living in the Philippines at the time, you will file something called a DS-260. So those of you who have gotten B visas, for example, to come to the United States, you've probably filled out a form called a DS-160. The DS-260 is just the immigrant analog to that non-immigrant DS-160. Filling that form out and submitting it will result in an interview at the consulate in Manila. The interviews are very straightforward. You will leave your passport with the consular officer and then get the passport back. And the passport will have inside it a visa that allows you to board a plane and fly to the US. So you do that, and let's say you land in San Francisco. You will be admitted by a Customs and Border Protection officer, and that officer will stamp the visa that is in your passport. And that stamp actually has legal significance. As soon as that stamp hits the visa, you become a conditional permanent resident, is what we call it. Colloquially, that is a green card holder. You will get the green card mailed to you Typically, it's mailed to our office and we check it for accuracy. And then we mail the green card to wherever you may be. In many instances, clients will enter the US initially for a couple of weeks and then fly back to their home country before they complete their relocation to the United States. 2 years, approximately 2 years after coming to the United States, so that is the start date of your green card, your conditional green card, you file an I-829 petition showing the US government that your EB-5 investment has created the 10 jobs. Once the I-829 petition is approved, you are then a permanent resident. You have a permanent green card. So currently, I-526 adjudication is taking approximately 18 to 24 months based on our estimates. The consular process from the point of approval until you get your visa is approximately 4 to 6 months. It depends a little bit on how busy the consulate is when your I-526 is approved. And then, of course, as I mentioned, the 2 years of conditional residency is needed before you can file the I-829 petition. Vicky mentioned something called concurrent filing, and that is an alternative to the pathway that I just illustrated. And it's a little more complicated, but I'll do my best to explain what it is and the advantage it represents for people who are already in the United States in valid non-immigrant status, perhaps like a student. Okay, so if somebody is already studying in the US and they're about to graduate, maybe their OPT is about to expire and they don't have any good options to be able to stay in the US. What are their options? Well, now one of them is EB-5. So it used to be that you could not file what is called an adjustment of status petition until the I-526 was approved. And again, that's the first step in the EB-5 process, right, is filing the I-526. Now, under the new law passed by the US Congress in March of 2022, the USCIS permits concurrent filing. So along with the I-526, you are allowed to file a form I-485, which is asking the government to adjust your status from non-immigrant to immigrant. Now, that 485 can't be approved until the I-526 is approved. So the 485 is going to remain pending for that 18 to 24 months. But the USCIS gives you two significant benefits that you can use while waiting for that I-526 and 485 to be approved. And that is work and travel authorization. You can file an I-131 that will allow you to enter and exit the US on something called advanced parole. That takes about 8 to 10 months to be approved. And you can file an I-765 also for work authorization. And that's currently only taking about 2 to 4 months to be approved. So this is a pretty significant benefit. If you think about what a green card really is, it is the right to work and travel in the United States. And you are getting both of those benefits, both of those green card benefits, if you will, before issuance of the green card. So for a student, for example, who is coming to the end of their OPT time, as long as they're in valid non-immigrant status, when they file an I-526, they can file the adjustment along with it. And with the filing of that adjustment, they get an independent right to continue to live in the United States. And when the I-765 is approved, they can then work in the United States and work for any employer. The I-765 really functions just like a green card. There is no limitation on what kind of employer or employment they can get. Once the 485 is approved, then you get CPR status, conditional permanent resident, the 2 years that I mentioned previously in the consular processing slide. And then from there, the process remains the same. So this truly is a game changer. many of my clients are students who don't have any way of staying in the US. Others are H-1B holders who may not be comfortable with their current employment situation. They fear layoffs, et cetera, and EB-5 has now emerged as a real viable immigration strategy in a way it just wasn't before the possibility of concurrent filing. So how do you do this? If you say, well, this all sounds great, but how do I invest money, and what does the USCIS want to see about the money that I invest? It's really a two-step analysis. The first is, what is the source of your funds? How did you make the money that you're going to invest? And typically, you can see here, these are the primary sources of funds that we see in EB-5. An asset sale, so the sale of a house that you've acquired to fund EB-5. Sometimes the mortgage of that house, so going to a bank and getting a mortgage on the house, that can fund EB-5. If you have your own company, you can borrow money from that company to fund an EB-5 investment, or you could pay out dividends to yourself, or of course, salary from the company could also work. Earned income, so employment with a company, that can work. And then gifts we see often. So gifts are typically any of the four sources listed above here. It's just that the person giving the gift essentially stands in the shoes of the EB-5 investor. The person who is gifting the money has to meet the same source of funds standard as if they were the actual petitioner. How did they earn the money to be able to make the gift? One other thing to note is that it doesn't have to be a single source. $800,000 is a lot of money. And so many of my clients will use one or two or three or even more different sources of funds to come up with the money needed to make the EB-5 investment. I should also say there are other sort of more esoteric source of funds. I've done pretty much everything under the sun: art sales, inheritances, other sort of more unique scenarios, but these are by far the most common sources of funds that I see among my clients. So that is an overview of the EB-5 immigration process. I hope you found that informative, and I will stick around and answer any questions you may have after the other presentations are done. Vicky, do you want to take it away? You're on mute, Vicky.
Thanks, Nick. Thank you for that presentation, and I'm sure there'll be lots of questions after. It does seem quite convoluted still to me, but you've broken it down quite well, and to make it a bit more digestible for all of us. And I'm sure more questions will come later. But shall I go hand over to Katie?
TJ will be next.
Sorry,
Yes.
TJ.
Okay, thank you.
I messed up your initials. Sorry.
That's okay.
I'm very sorry. But
That's
please.
okay. We're almost getting to 1 a.m. now, Vicky. So
Oh yeah, gosh.
you're allowed.
Okay, it's late for you.
Okay, let me just share my screen. Let's see. Yeah. Beginning. Okay. Let's give a second. Okay, thank you. So thank you, Nikolai, for that. I think that sets up very well for what we are about to present. So first, I'd like to thank Vicky and her team at the Golden Visa Central and Bambina at Manila House for giving us the opportunity to present our project today. And also thank you for the people in attendance today for making time for us. So as Vicky had mentioned, my name is TJ Kang, and I'm a recovering lawyer of 20 years. I lead the legal diligence and financial underwriting team at Betha Capital. And in my 20 years or so experience as a lawyer, I've been working on many transactions that are similar to the one I'm going to present to you today. And so both my colleague Lily Zhang and I are excited to present this EB5 investment opportunity, which we call the Four Seasons Surf Club Residences EB5. So just as a bit of background and what the presenter will cover, in fact, this EB5 project is actually phase 2 of an existing Four Seasons hotel and residence, which was completed in 2017 and located in Miami, Florida, in the US. And so we'll go over some of the background on that initial project and what's called the Surf Club and the Four Seasons Hotel and Residence at the Surf Club. Then we'll cover and go briefly over the developer, Four Partners, and then spend some time on the actual EB5 project that we're presenting today, which is called the Four Seasons Surf Club Residences. And then finally, some background on the sponsors, the Regional Center, and Bethel Capital, the underwriting team. So the Surf Club. So the Surf Club was a members-only club that opened in 1930 in a neighborhood of Surfside, Miami, which is in sort of the northern part of the well-known Miami Beach Strip. And it was an ultra-exclusive club where everyone wanted to go there and be seen. So the likes of Winston Churchill, Elizabeth Taylor, Frank Sinatra, Henry Ford, they all were known to be visitors to that club. It was really a social hangout for the famous and wealthy at that time. And so this is if you'll see, this is the old surf club from back in the 1930s. And this is pictures of the old surf club, and there's some in person, there are some pictures of now the new surf club. And so the developer in 2011 acquired the surf club, and they commenced the redevelopment of that property into what's known as the Four Seasons Hotel and Residences at the Surf Club, with a view to bringing back the old glamour and the exclusivity of the original surf club. So this is a picture of the current surf club. And as you see here, I'll just show you, this is the old, you might see my pointer here, this is the old surf club, exterior of the old surf club building. And around that, they built the new Four Seasons Hotel and Residence. So as I said, in 2017, this hotel and residence at the Surf Club opened. It's essentially a 107-room hotel with 121 private condominiums. And the developer kept the old Surf Club building exterior, as I just said, and built the new hotel and residence around it. Now, this project was highly successful. The hotel right now has the highest average daily rate for hotels of any Four Seasons in the whole world. And in high season, a basic suite at that hotel goes for around $5,000 US a night. Also, the condominiums that have been built, the private residences, have recently sold for more than $5,000 a square foot, making it one of the most valuable condominium properties in the US. Also, in the redeveloped Surf Club, they also have they boast a Michelin-starred restaurant by world-renowned chef Thomas Keller, who has three Michelin-starred restaurants, 3-star Michelin restaurants, Per Se in New York and French Laundry in California. So this is a roundabout way to saying this is a very successful development that was completed in 2017 by Four Partners. And so this is a rendering of the original, the 2017 project that opened. This is the front on the street side, and this is the beach side. So the developer is Four Partners, and the founder is Mr. Nadim Ashi. Four Partners is an integrated real estate and hospitality development company based in Miami, Florida. They are a very successful operator and developer of Four Seasons properties around the world. And so right now they own all 4 of the Four Seasons properties in Southern Florida, and are currently developing several Four Seasons hotels and residences in the United States and Europe. So this is a slide with some of their developments. So there's one in Telluride, USA, which is going to be at a very exclusive ski hill. They have developments in Spain and Vatican City in Europe. They own these four Seasons currently that are operating in Southern Florida. And they're also developing another Four Seasons hotel and residence in Coconut Grove in Miami, which is in the southern part of Miami, whereas the Surf Club is in the northern part of Miami. And they're also actually currently developing 2 Four Seasons yachts. Okay, so this is a picture of the existing Four Seasons hotel and residence. And what I'm going to show you now, which is our project, phase 2, is the 3 towers that we'll be building. And actually construction has already started, but the 3 separate towers, 2 towers to the north of the existing hotel and residence, and 1 tower to the south. So this phase 2 project consists of 3 towers total, with 53 units total in all 3 towers. So it's a very, in terms of the number of units available for sale, it's actually very small. And so we'll give you a quick summary of the project. So the total project cost for those 3 towers is just over $1 billion. We're hoping to raise up to $132 million of EB5 funds from up to 165 investors. Construction for all 3 towers is expected to be complete in Q4 2025 or maybe Q1 2026. But Tower 1, which is the one that's actually gone vertical, we'll show you a picture later on in the presentation. They expect to begin delivering condominium units in Q1 or Q2 of next year. So for the investors, $800,000 investment, investors get a 0.25% return, which is paid annually. The funds that are raised in this offering is used to loan the money to the project and the developer. And the loan term is initially for 4 years with a potential for 2 one-year options. And the loan is going to be secured by a pledge of the equity of the borrower and or a first lien on the property. Okay. So here are some renderings. I just wanted to show you what really the flavor of what this development looks like. So this is Tower 1. This is Tower 2. And these are some renderings. As you'll see, they're all beachfront. And this is actually Tower 3. The style of Tower 3 is slightly different, but it's the same level of luxury. So as you can see by the rendering, this is really an ultra luxury condominium project, and it's targeting very specific, very well-off, very rich buyers. So I think Nick had mentioned something about TA designation, and that's where if you are in if your project is in a rural area or a high employment area, that project can qualify for a reduced investment of $800,000 as opposed to the $1,050,000. So actually, when we first looked at this project, which was in 2022, this project didn't qualify as an urban TEA. But in 2023, it did qualify because they were changing unemployment numbers due to the COVID pandemic. And so we were very fortunate to get access to the project for EB5 purposes because typically this type of location in a very affluent area of Miami would not otherwise qualify for an urban TEA. And so as you know, in real estate, location, and then this is in one of the best and safest locations in the US for maintaining property values. The other aspect of this EB5 offering is that we have a I-526 denial guarantee. So in the event that an individual investor who invests and makes an application is subsequently denied their application, there is a 30-day refund guarantee. And so it's subject to very non-onerous conditions on the guarantee. Basically, if you filed your application and provided USCIS with what they're required, and you get denied, you'll get your money back in 30 days. And so that's a pretty robust and pretty clean refund guarantee that is available to investors, so that they get some comfort that in the event a petition is denied, that they'll get their money back relatively quickly. And so when we're looking at EB5 projects from an investor's perspective, there's really two things. One is immigration risk, which is, will I get my green card back? Will I get my green card at the end of this process? And two, investment risk, which is, will I get my investment back at the end of this process? And so generally, when you think about immigration risk, it's really tied to whether the project is going to commence and complete as projected, and secondly, create the necessary jobs that you need to meet the requirements under the EB5 program. And so, and Nikolai, I think, may have mentioned that for each EB5 investor in a Region Center program, you have to create 10 jobs. And so in this project, in this offering, we're looking to have 165 investors, meaning the project needs to create 1,650 jobs, so that at the end of the day, investors will be able to demonstrate to USCIS that the requisite number of jobs were created from their investment, and that they can get their conditional green card turned into a permanent green card. For this project, actually, they're projected to be close to 7,000 jobs to be created, and we only need 1,650. And in fact, based on the amount of money that's been spent on the construction to date, it's projected that there's actually close to 2,400 jobs already created as of May of this year. And so, in fact, all the necessary jobs have been created. So from that perspective, we think the immigration risk has been greatly reduced. Second, as I mentioned before, the other point is, will the actual project get built? And so in this, if we look at the capital stack, there's 31 of the close to one, or just over 1 billion in project costs. 321 million, or 31%, is being funded by a senior loan that's in place right now. 12.8 is projected to be funded through the EB5 loan, and 56.2% is being funded by the developer and deposits made by investors who are, purchasers of condominiums who have already signed purchase contracts and deposited a significant amount of their purchase price with the developer. And the developer under Florida law is entitled to use those proceeds to actually construct the project. So from our perspective, there's very little doubt that this project will be completed. And in fact, the reality is that the EB5 amount is not, even though we're hoping to raise $132 million, the developer does not need all $132 million to complete the project. And in fact, they don't need any of it. If we can't raise the full amount, they will still be able to complete this project because they have other sources of capital. So, investments raised. Will I get my investment back? And so for this project, I mentioned that the project cost was about $1.035 billion. The gross projected sales revenue is close to 1.25 billion. And so if you look at how sales proceeds gets allocated, the first 482 goes to the fact that some of that money actually is from deposits from the sellers, from the buyers, and there's some selling fees that are associated with that. And then the remainder, the first 321 after that, goes to repay the senior loan. And then the EB5 loan is immediately after the senior loan. And what proceeds are left is around 445 million from the sale of the condominiums to repay approximately 132 million of the EB5 loan. So essentially like essentially three times the sale proceeds remaining to repay the senior loans. I mean, so the EB5 loan. So we think that the exit strategy for this project is very clear. It's going to be the sale of condos. It first goes to pay down the senior loan, and then the remainder goes down to pay down the EB5 loan. And this is very clear in the loan agreement. There's a specific waterfall that says from sales proceeds, senior loans gets paid first, then EB5. And on top of that, the loan agreement is very clear that they don't have the ability, the developer doesn't have the ability to distribute profit to themselves while the EB5 loan is outstanding. So on this gross projected sales revenue of 1.25 billion, how do you know that this is realistic? Well, thankfully, we have pre-sales. And so as of September of this year, they have sold 75% of the available units. So that's the units in Tower 1 and Tower 2, totaling pre-sale prices of over 675 million. So in Tower 1, I think there's 27 units available. They've already sold 20 of them. In Tower 2, there's 9 units available, and they've already sold 6 of them. And so for a total of 677 or 78 million in sales price, and they've actually receiving deposits, significant deposits on these sales, $300 million of deposits on $675 million of sales. So the risk of sellers not completing their transaction or their purchases is very, very low. And so based on what we know about the sales on Tower 1 and Tower 2 and the average, sort of prices they're getting on their units, we know that the projected sales price, projected gross sales price of 1.25 billion is very reasonable. And in fact, it might be actually lower than what they'll ultimately they'll receive. So just to reiterate that we get regular updates on their pre-sale activity. And so this, this was from September, but we do get monthly report from them. So we are on top of, we keep on top of what their sales performance is. So just to give you an idea of who is buying, and these units you'll see that the prices on these units are actually quite high. So I think the highest one is at $81 million. So these units are very, very luxurious. They are priced very high. So the buyers themselves are it's a niche market in terms of the buyers. And so, for instance, the former CEO of Google had purchased, I believe, in Tower 1. And also the CEO of Citadel, which is one of the most successful hedge funds in the world. I think the person is the 35th richest man in the world. He also bought a tower. He also bought a unit in Tower 1. And so the sales or the purchases of these units are very well-to-do people. And from our perspective, the target market for the sales for these units by the developer is one in which we have a high confidence that they will sell and close, and if they purchase, will close on these units. And just as a sort of a background, it recently came out that Florida is the second highest real estate value in the United States. Since June of 2022, actually, they've seen property values increase on the average of over 4% throughout the state, whereas in states like California, we've seen prices drop and values drop by more than 3%. So even in a high interest rate environment that we're in now, we're seeing a very strong real estate market in Florida. And this all goes to sort of demonstrate that ultimately the investment safety of this development and ultimately for the investors is very high. So this is a slide where we have, I think this is just the former CEO of Merrill Lynch had purchased in the old phase 1 condo. The CEO of WeWork is a purchaser and now a subsequent seller of a condo in the old phase 1 Four Seasons private residences. And so the purchasers of these units are obviously very well-to-do, and they're not necessarily as impacted by the macroeconomic conditions that we're going through right now. And so we're very confident that the developer can actually deliver on the sales that they're projecting. So as a summary, so on immigration safety, so is the project going to get built? Are the jobs going to be created? Yes. Construction on Tower 1 has already started. They've actually topped out the building. They've all of the exterior construction on the tower has been completed, and they're going to start delivering units in Q2 of next year. In terms of the number of jobs that are required for EB5 purposes, they've already created enough jobs such that if we have 165 investors, enough jobs have already been created. Secondly, the developer has provided a construction completion guarantee. And lastly, they've provided a very robust refund guarantee that's on an I-256E denial, which is payable within 30 days. In terms of investment safety, we truly believe this is one of the safest investment opportunities on the market today for EB5. This is a Four Seasons branded ultra luxury condominium project with one of the highest square foot sales price of any condominium in the US, which they've realized. This is not just what they want to receive, but they've actually realized. The 3 towers total 53 units, and of the available units, they've already sold 75%. The EB5 lender, which would be us, and would have a senior position or a very secure position on the collateral, and it's expected that the sales proceeds would result in essentially 3 times the amount needed to repay the EB5 loan. And then lastly, that actually the developer has had a track record of using EB5 funds. And so in their initial phase 1 project, which they finished in 2017, they had borrowed from EB5 sources $100 million to complete that project. And in fact, they paid that loan off in November of 2021. So within 4 years of borrowing that money, they had repaid that loan. So they have it's a good track, good to know that the developer had experience using EB5 funds and that they paid that money in time within the loan term. Lastly, with respect to the project on this slide, this is just a quick picture of the construction progress. So this picture was probably taken 2.5 months ago. So it's more progress, more construction progress has occurred. But in essence, Tower 1, which is what this is right here, will start delivery of units in Q2 of 2024. And then Tower 2, which will be right here, they have actually started horizontal construction. And then Tower 3 is on the side here. So it's not quite shown. It's off the slide. But Tower 3 has also started horizontal construction. They've demolished the building that used to be there, and now they're working on deep soil mixing and preparing the ground for vertical construction. And those 2 towers are expected to start delivery of the units at the end of 2005, and maybe early 2006. So that's a summary of the project aspect in a nutshell. With respect to the project sponsors, the regional center, as Nick mentioned, this is where you pool investments. You're using the regional center program, and there's a party that runs the regional center. And so the regional center is EB5 Southeast RC. It is owned and operated by a colleague, L.A. Cohen. And his experience in EB5 is that he co-founded and was a managing partner of Extel New York Regional Center, which raised nearly $1 billion for development of real estate project in New York. Lastly, the underwriting team and Betha Capital. We've been in the immigration space for over 20 years, working mainly in Canadian, European, and US immigration. We've raised over $1.5 billion in US, Canada, and other residency by investment programs in Europe. And in the EB5 space, we've been active since 2012 and raised over $400 million for various projects. And we've highlighted a few of the projects that we've raised funds for. So this project, a quick overview of the professional team. I mentioned 4 partners: the developer, the regional center, our immigration and securities law, has been prepared by Greenberg Torek, a leading law firm in the EB5 space. And the economic report, which deals with the job creation numbers, is done by another leading firm in the immigration EB5 space, which is EPR. So I think that brings me to the end of our presentation. I'm just going to quickly ask Lily if there was something that she wanted to highlight. If she is.
Thank you, TJ. No, I was looking at the questions, so some clients are already asking questions now.
Okay.
Do you have anything to add, Lily, or do you want me to proceed to Q&A?
Maybe we'll just, start from the questions. When I think
All right.
of something, I'll share.
Great, great. We have a question. I think this is for Nicola. Do you have to give up your Philippine passport if you enter this EB5 program? It's succeeded by, do you have the option to remain a green card holder and not a US citizen? If yes, how long? And as a green card holder, are you subject to the same tax requirement as a US citizen?
Okay, I can answer those questions. So the first one, the answer is no, you don't have to give up your Philippine passport. The EB5 program grants you a green card, which is not citizenship. So that would not affect your ability to keep your Philippine passport. And my understanding is that the Philippines, Vicky, correct me if I'm wrong, allows dual citizenship. So even if you did ultimately become a US citizen, you still could keep your Philippine passport. And that answers, I think, question number 2 as well. You can have dual citizenship. Let's see, if yes, for how long? I'm not sure if that's asking how long it takes to get US citizenship, but again, in order to apply for US citizenship, you have to have been a green card holder for 5 years. So after that period of time, you can apply for citizenship. In terms of tax, I will say I'm not a tax attorney, I'm an immigration attorney, so I generally can't give tax advice, but I can say that you are subject to US taxation when you become a green card holder, in the same way, generally speaking, as if you were a US citizen, so you become a US person. As I explained in my presentation, you don't become a green card holder until, some way down the road in the EB5 process. So you have time to structure your assets in such a way that that structure would potentially minimize your tax exposure. And for my high net worth individual clients, I definitely recommend that they meet with tax advisors in advance of obtaining the green card.
Thanks, Nick. I think sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Vicky.
I think the question number 2 was, do you have the option to remain a green card holder and not a US citizen? And
Yes, you do. Correct. Yeah, you do not have to become a citizen if you don't want to.
Okay, thanks, Nick. There's a follow-up question for you. Can you elaborate more on the sources of income for investors?
Yeah, it's really specific, of course, to the individual and how they want to fund the EB5 investment. But it's a pretty rigorous analysis. And it is the major part of what I do when I'm engaged to represent somebody in the EB5 process, is to make sure that the money that's being invested is going to meet USCIS's investment requirements. So they want to know the source of the money, how it was earned. As I explained earlier, often that's maybe from a house or a property sale, or earnings from someone's business or company, or employment. And the other aspect to that is something called path of funds. So in addition to showing the source, we have to be able to trace the money through the banking system or other movement from the source all the way until it's invested into the EB5 project. There can be some complexities in that if somebody's inherited money or if it's a very aged asset, there may be some features of that present some gaps in the evidence. It's quite fact specific, but we're very good at strategizing with a client about which source of funds to use. Many of my clients have multiple options, and so we will typically get on a call when somebody's thinking about EB5 and discuss what their options are, and come up with the one that makes the most sense for the client, and also usually is the easiest for the USCIS to understand. Anyone who's interested in discussing that in more detail, I'd be happy to schedule a call with Vicky, and we can talk specifically about the source of funds options that might be available to you.
Thank you, Nick. There's another question for you. What happens if the government changes its immigration regulations midstream through this investment or project?
That's a great question, and one that has a different answer today than it did before passage of the EB5 Reform and Integrity Act. So before that act, changes in the program could have affected existing investors, but now, because of the passage of that act, there is actually specific language that grandfathers existing petitions. So if there is a change or if there is a pause in the EB5 program, the EB5 Reform and Integrity Act instructs the USCIS to continue to adjudicate I-526 petitions. So this is kind of a safe harbor that the US Congress built in to the EB5 program when they passed the EB5 Reform and Integrity Act. I should say this program has been around for a long time. As you saw in my presentation, it was started in the 1990s. And I also mentioned that it is that rare immigration program that really is popular among both Democrats and Republicans. That said, as is the case with any moneyed industry, you have some abuse, you have some problems, people take advantage of certain loopholes in the program, et cetera. And while by and large, the EB5 program, in my view, has always been a positive program for the United States, there were certain aspects of it that the US government wanted to improve. And they really did that in the EB5 Reform and Integrity Act that was passed in 2022. You know, the name says it all, reform and integrity. And what that law did was really modernize EB5 and bring it to a level with additional disclosure obligations, additional transparency. And all of those changes are really focused on making the program better and safer for new investors, people that are on this call. So I think this is a very, very good time to be looking at EB5, given these important changes that have been made by the US Congress.
Thanks, Nick. I think this question is for TJ. Can you talk more about the returns investors should realistically expect, please?
So specifically with this project, the return to investors is 0.25% a year on the $800,000 that they invest, paid annually. I think that will be pretty close to most projects that are out there. All these sort of EB5 regional center program investments aren't really geared. There are a few exceptions, but aren't really geared to provide an investment return to investors. For the most part, the return is the green card. And ultimately, the way I think investors should look at it is, how safe is my capital that I invest? Not a question of how much return do I expect to receive, but how am I expecting to get my money back at the end of the 4 years or the 5 years or whatever the term of the loan may be for a particular project. But I think most people view it that way. My upside, my return is the green card, and hopefully the return of my $800,000.
Thank you. On the topic of job creation, what sources are counted towards EB5 application? Is it the construction stage? Does it also include jobs created in the facility after construction? What about developments in surrounding area? Lily, would you like to answer that?
I think maybe TJ can have a
Okay.
better answer for this one.
That's a good question, and it's not a question I know the very specific answer to. What I will say is that every project has, and I mentioned in the presentation, there was an econ report, which is essentially a job report prepared by an economist that calculates based on the type of project and what you're building, what type of business it is, what type of how much money is being spent over the specific type of time frame it's being spent. They determine based on direct jobs that are created, so people actually on the ground building or doing whatever, plus indirect jobs that they're creating, and that might be purely based on the type of amount of money being spent and the type of construction that's being undertaken. That these economists prepare reports, and generally speaking, USCIS accepts these reports. So if your report, which is for instance, on the Four Seasons project, our report says there are close to 7,000 jobs that can be created from this project. Typically, you will look for a project that has a buffer. So if, let's say you're looking to raise, 165 from 165 investors, then you need 1,650 jobs to meet the 10 jobs per investor requirement. Then you might be looking at investments where there's a buffer. So you don't look for a project where they say, if we need 1,650 jobs, that this project is going to create 2,000 jobs, because you might find that, well, what if they don't create the full 2,000 and they only create 1,500? You might have a problem. So most of the time, people are looking for projects that have a buffer, and it may be 1.5 times, 2 times the amount of jobs required. In this particular project that we presented, there's obviously 4 times the number of jobs. And in fact, the other thing to look out for is, when the investment is made, is the job prospective? Is it going to be created, or has it already been created? Because if the jobs have already been created, then you're pretty comfortable that you won't fail because the jobs weren't created.
Thank you. Another question, do you get some perks like special rates to Four Seasons hotels worldwide as an EB5 investor? What are the other perks, if any? Lily?
TJ?
Unfortunately
I'm
not.
sorry. Yeah.
I would like to get those
Unfortunately
perks
not.
too, but unfortunately not.
Yeah.
Okay, well, there's another question. I want clarification. Do you get back, or is it right to say that your investment of 850 or 1 million is refunded to you? What is the time frame? I think the investment is clear. It is 800,000 for this investment, or even for all other EB5 projects to qualify for it. And I guess Lily can continue.
Yeah, I actually just answered this question. So the amount is $800,000, and the return is decided on the loan term. So the loan maturity. Once the loan matures, and the money comes back to the NCE, so the manager will return the money to you. So for this project, the loan term is 4 years plus 1 2-year extension options, and the 4 years starts from the first draw from the escrow. So you're looking at the maximum 6 years from now, not from now, from the first draw, sorry. It is possible that we don't know that the developer may return the money to the NCE at the initial maturity, but maximum is 6 years.
Yeah. Just to add color to that, like the terms of our loan, in fact, it's from a developer's perspective, they don't want to keep the money if they don't need to, because it obviously costs them money to borrow the money. And so, our view is they have a 4-year term to use. Initial term is 4 years. That coincides pretty nicely with when they expect to start delivering and finally deliver their last unit, and that's when we expect to get repaid. And so our expectation is, this will be a 4-year loan, but obviously developers want some cushion, so that's why they have the 2 1-year options, just in case that's not possible. But reality of it is we expect to be repaid in 4 years. very similar to their initial project where the loan was repaid in 4 years too.
All right. I think that wraps up the questions. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us this afternoon. Please feel free to reach out to me for questions, or if you'd like a consultation with our lawyers, or we have two lawyers here for the developer side and also for the immigration side. And whatever you need, just reach out to me and I'll make sure that I'm able to attend to all of you. Thank you. The questions were very, very informative for a lot of us. And thank you for clarifying. Thank you, Bambina, for again doing this collaboration with us. Thank you, Manila House, and thank you, everybody. Good afternoon.
Oh, thank you so much, everyone. Vicky, will this be recorded? It's been recorded, right? Is there any way they can access the video if they'd like to?
Yes, so they can reach out to me. I will send them the video. We are also on Facebook Live.
Oh, great. And I just want to thank our panelists today who are overseas. Thank you for staying up. I know it's quite late. I appreciate it. And thank you to all of, I see some members in the audience as well, and other attendees for joining us today. Thank you once again, Vicky, for collaborating with us on this webinar.
Thank you.
And see you again soon.
Thanks.
Uh,
everyone.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a
Bye-bye.
good evening, everyone. Night. Bye.